Well, hello and welcome to a Halloween edition of the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I am pleased to introduce Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer. And I believe joining us a little later will be Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation department. Today, as we do every Wednesday, Dion is going to be giving a presentation of some cool Alpha tips and techniques, but we're also here to answer your question. So go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. All right, let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. I am here.
Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter, and we'll get started.
Awesome. That's my scary costume.
Scary.
It is. It's frightening. It's bone chilling.
I'll be solutions engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's when I pretend to be a professional. Rest time, not so much. Anyway, hey, everybody, welcome. And Halloween week, we're very excited. Love this time of year. Tend to do it, overdo it a little bit. You know, I just enjoy the whole holiday, and we got some fun stuff. My kids are really excited about it. It's gonna be fun. Actually, I was, as you heard, our intro was one of the most amazing songs ever, which was Thriller, which even today is just mind blowing how good it is. But I was taking my kids into school the other day, and we were just playing that at full speed, and it was really fun. Especially my part I love is at the very end when Vincent Price comes on and does his laugh. It's just like, yeah, I just chills every time. It's so really good. Well, the funniest part about that is that the principal at this school is really cool. So we pull up, we're playing Thriller at full volume, and the principal starts dancing and doing the zombie dance. It's just great. My kids were digging that. Well, thank you for joining us on this, well, in Texas, a very, very cold day. It's really dipped down there. It's crazy. And we appreciate you taking your time to come visit with us. We are here for you. So in fact, we've got this discussion kind of from today came from a QA that came in, and also there's another question that another person sent to guides at alphasoftware.com. We're going to cover that also. So we encourage you, if you have like things you want us to cover, topics, other things, ideas, send them to guides at alphasoftware.com. I think you'll just really, really, really dig it. We try to do our best job of answering those questions and doing what we can to bring as much good information to you as possible. And as always, you can ask questions here. So go to the Q&A section or the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And in there, you can put in your questions. Dave and our esteemed colleague, Sarah, I believe Sarah on there, I think so.
She has just joined us. Yep.
Yes, yeah. I know she had a different schedule today, so I do appreciate her taking the time to visit with us. And she can also help answer questions I can't, which is very often. So that's always good to have there. No really breaking news right now, other than a lot of really cool features that we have to catch up on. We were so busy getting ready and getting everything put together for DevCon that we kind of got a little behind the curve. So we're going to be covering some of the cool new capabilities that are in Alpha, so you can kind of get up to speed, see how you can use them. A lot of them are really simple and easy to deliver into your solution within, just by upgrading to the latest version and using it there. Again, what I'm going to show today is production, so it is in the production release. So in the future, we may show pre-release items. We always recommend that you just test those separately from the standpoint to be careful until they're full production. So with that, we're going to shift gears and talk user interface, always a super duper important aspect. Specifically, that is really how, to a large degree, your users experience your solution. We are going to be talking a little bit more about API coming up. We've got some amazing new features that I want to share with you. And again, that's more of a developer who is experiencing your system will use an API interface versus users. But today is more about users, and we'll talk about user interface elements of a new capability that's been into it, which actually is really super handy, can be used in many, many different ways, and is very powerful because it provides a very compact way to deliver information. And what we're talking about is the button badges capability. This is really neat. This has been asked for a while, and I'm super excited to have it in there. It's now built into the system where we can render button badges. They are super powerful. You see them everywhere. I mean, in fact, I'm looking at a Jira instance. I use Jira for some of the projects and things like that. And you see button little badges everywhere within that interface because it's a very dense representation. Specifically, we have a topic. Let's say this is the number of users. Well, you can build right into that the actual number of users. So this would be the users. And so this badge not only allows a person to click on it and take an action and go to a different place, but also by having that information, you might even save them a click. Maybe they're trying to figure out how many current users are online or how many they have registered or something like that. Well, by presenting it in a button badge like this, it goes great towards making sure that the user doesn't even have to click. You can save them clicks. The other is depending on the color and the style and everything else, which is fully changeable, you could create sort of calls to action. So maybe there are 23 errors that need to be reviewed or something like that. So you can see it's kind of a red color, whereas maybe if it's green, it's just informational from that standpoint. Or even if it's yellow, it's like, hey, you don't have to take action, but we want to give you a heads up on that. So you can use a very powerful combination of the iconography, the actual badge, and the content of the badge, which can be many different ways to do it. And we're going to explore a little bit of that today to really create what I like to call a compact information representation that allows you to make your interface really powerful without cluttering it. It kind of minimizes the clutter because instead of having like a side panel with all this data, you can kind of build them into the buttons and other aspects from there. And as you're going to see from now in a few moments, this is really powerful. These are programmable. So on the fly, you can sit there and modify them, which is really cool because as your system changes, as things go on, you can be giving essentially updated information. So not only can it be used from like a button standpoint, but in an infographic. I mean, you could actually use it as an infographic where maybe you had like 10 of these icons on a home page, and on there you had this to show the number of current users. And then the next thing was number of orders or invoices or things like that. Well, you don't have to create a whole bunch of custom graphics and stuff. You can just put a button on there and include a badge with some content and you're good to go. So very powerful, very easy to use. So the key things are they're developer styled, meaning you can style them. They have infinite styling capabilities. They're fast, they render very quickly, and they look sharp. They're very detailed, and they're programmable, which means that they're not static in nature, is that you can do a lot of fun things with it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment as you're using the interface and you're doing it. So it opens up all these cool things you can do. And so let's dive in and explore those. As always, if you have questions about what I'm presenting on, go to your questions section and put your questions there. We'll cover them as much as possible. If we can't, we'll get back to you. And then also, we are excited. So with that, just do a quick sound check, video check, everything coming through okay?
A-okay.
Outstanding. Let's go ahead and move into it. So I'm going to jump into my development environment, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new UX here just for my demo. So let's go here, wake it up. There we go. And I'm just going to use a standard there. And to make it look good. So I could put some, I'm just going to put a panel card in here. Okay. Now, a couple cool things, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit here, but this area has changed a little bit. First is, you notice I went down to panel card, searched it out, and put it in there. Now you don't need to do that. You can click add control, type in the control you want, and they show up here. And I'm using that more and more. There's a lot of muscle memory that is built into going, I kind of knew where all the controls were. So when I go to a panel, I just immediately click on panels and go there. But now more and more, I'm retraining my muscle memory to say, do the controls. The other thing that's really powerful about this is the new favorites capability. So if you want to, you can add certain controls that you use over and over and over in the favorites. So you don't even have to click here and type. You can just add the favorite in. It'll show right here. And that's so for instance, let's say a panel card is something I do all the time. So I can right click on this and say add to favorites. And now when I log in, I can just go in here and say, oh yeah, panel card, boom, and I'm there. So you can have those, little favorite things that you have that you want. Favorites are individual controls, but remember you can also save groups of controls to your library and reinstantiate those if you need. So that's kind of a cool feature. And again, one of the things, if you're old school, you're like probably still digging things out. But as you start to use this, you'll find that it really simplifies it, because there's probably like 10 controls you use over text boxes, buttons, panel cards, panel layouts, those kind of things. And by putting them here, they're just really fast and easier to build your interface. So I've gone and go ahead there. So I'll go button badge webinar. Ooh, okay. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's the first step, as we've done before. I'm just a little sluggish today. Okay, so I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go ahead and add a control. Put it in the wrong place, but I'll just put a button control there. And I'll call this, for now, users. And I'm going to move that up in my panel card. I had it in the wrong place here. So this is your traditional button. And if I just go ahead and render it, it defaults into a textual representation. And so in the moment, you'll see we have just a simple button here, user. You'll notice the styling. The styling is dictated by the sub theme. So I'm using capsule in this case. That's my default here. But remember, there are different types. So before we get into the badges, you can create different types. So you can have your base theme. And that's just the standard theme that comes with alpha. And it allows you to, and so you can play between the base theme and the badges to do stuff. So you have this users here, and you notice it highlights when I click it. It's not doing anything right now. So you can choose the type of theme you want by here. And some of the cool ones are like circle. So you can create circle buttons. You can create capsule rays that give you a little background. So a lot of really fun stuff that you can do. So I'll go ahead and use capsule rays. That one's kind of interesting for our experiment today. And go ahead and put in our working preview. There we go. And you'll see we have a nice little button that is capsule raised. It's got a little highlighting, looks nice, takes care of all the click effects and things like that. You notice it's using what's called the pulse effect. When you click on it, it just doesn't change color. You'll see it kind of transitions through a series of colors to kind of give you a little bit more solid, real full feel for it. Okay, so I've got my button on there. Now I want to go ahead and add a badge to it. So the way I do that is you'll notice there's a new feature here called Show Badge. And Show Badge is just a option I have on here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll come back on the button layout in a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and say Show Badge. Now, once I've clicked Show Badge, I'm going to move that up here. You'll see we have badge settings. I'm going to go ahead and open on there. Well, first, there are default classes, but you can add your own class information, both style and class information. And we recommend you use styles, or classes, excuse me, not styles, because what that does is that allows you infinite flexibility in terms of styling your badge. So you can make it look and act in color and font and everything else. And so what's nice is if you have a really good CSS person, you can just say, hey, style me a badge, give me the CSS, plug it in there, and you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and leave those alone for now, but you'll see here is where we define where the badge location is, vertically and horizontally within the item there. And then you'll notice that right now there's another button here called button location relative to edge. I'm going to come back to that in a few moments. And so I'll go ahead and put in the badge text, and we'll go ahead and say, I'm going to start with number. So I'll put the number 45. Okay. So let's look and see what that looks like. And that's just kind of using the basic initial set. So you'll notice, boom, right away, I have a nice little badge here. It is on here. It's not exactly where I want it, but it's doing all the rendering for me. I don't have to do any special things for that, and we're good to go there. So you'll see, excuse me, the badge is relative right now to the center point. So if I go back in, and this is where you can just use trial and error. Let's go ahead and say the badge location is relative to the edge. Click OK. And go in here. And you'll see then it's relative to the edge. I have a little clipping here just because of the location of this button, but I'll go ahead and fix that real quick. Go ahead and go to my panel card here. And I'll go ahead and actually, you know what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put a special container in there. So it just shows up in the middle. I'll use what's called an alignment container. We'll make that 100%. And for the alignment container, I'm going to make it in the center and the middle. So what this does is a little container, it takes whatever content in here and aligns it within your window. So now, instead of it being stuck up in the left-hand corner, if I've done this correctly, you'll see it should be about in the middle of the screen. There we go. So the alignment container kind of just moved it and said, take whatever content and put it here. This 45 is offset now. So you'll notice that instead of centered here, it actually offsets it from the edge of it, which is kind of more what you're going to want to see, but you never know. There are different ways to approach this from a standpoint. So we can play with that offset. We say, oh, yeah, it's pretty nice, but let's go ahead and do a couple other things. Let's go ahead and make the offset badge out there. Oh, it's relative badge there. You can play with the offset and the other things along those lines to kind of make it look a little bit nicer. You can also put the location of the badge. So horizontally, we are on the right, but maybe for some reason I want it on the left. So I can go ahead and go into that and see what's going on there. And we'll see that the badge shows up, but it's on the left-hand side. So you have flexibility of how you want. You could either do it on the bottom, things along those lines. Now you'll notice we're using a text button, but now we can go up here to our button and say, you know what, instead I want to use an image only. Now that I've done that, I can select the image name, can open that up. Now, if you want, you could use your own image there. You could go ahead and use a base 64 encoded image. That's kind of cool, but that's a new feature that allows you to actually use base 64 data that could be in a database or something like that. But I'm going to go ahead and go to SVG icon, and I'm going to select and put up here user. Oh, no, people. I think it's, there we are. So we have our, that's people. Maybe I want person. Oh, you know what? Let's do people because it could be multiple. So I'm going to select that one there. So now what we've said is that we want our button here to not show necessarily that text, but we actually want it to have a little icon of a person that's more flexible from that standpoint. So go ahead and go into working preview. And you'll see in a moment when it renders. But now we have this nice looking button, and check it out. It's kind of round because we're using that capsule. If you want to get rid of the surrounding, you can just make it a base button, but you can play with it. So it's a combination of the button type and the badge capability here. But as you can see, this is looking a lot nicer and cleaner, and it's sort of a call to action. When you hover over it, it does there. So I like these buttons a lot. They're really sharp and they're really, really handy. Now let's explore a couple other things that we can do with it, which are really fun. So first, notice that it's 45. Now, badges are supposed to be small little areas that are next to there. They're not meant to, because you may have a series of buttons and you want them to line up correctly. So you got to be careful. You don't want this badge to get too large. So there's a function built into it, which is very handy, is that you'll notice there's something called maximum number. And this describes a little bit more of what that maximum number is. But what it allows you to do is the following. Let's go ahead and just put in 200. So let's say I have a button here, maximum number is 99, but the actual value of it will be 200. And let's go ahead and look at it. And you'll see now, notice that it's not saying 200, it's saying 99 plus. So that's really handy because if you had 10,000, this badge may expand all the way over here and then push everything out of the way. So you lose control over your user interface. So built in is a function that says you can set the maximum amount, and then after that, we just put a little plus sign after it. And there's ways to control that and enhance it from there. But that's handy because you don't necessarily want to have every number on there. More importantly is you'll notice that now it keeps it to, this is the maximum width you'll get for your badge. So it's always going to look really good when you have a button bar or a badge series of badged buttons next to each other there. Now this is a regular button. You can do anything you want to it. So all the action JavaScript, I can double click on it, add in action JavaScript to say load up a UX or do other things like that. So really, really handy stuff that's able to do it. Now, so you have a lot of flexibility in terms of styling and cleaning it up and making it look good and making sure it aligns correctly, colors, everything. It's completely stylable. In fact, if we go down here to badge text, you can, maximum number, you can notice it's maximum number plus. There are other things you can do there to change that. And again, with the class name, what we can do is we can change the class name that we're using to something that I've created. I don't have one in here for this demonstration, but you'll notice that you're able to put this, say, in your CSS and then be able to connect it and use it from there. Now let's talk about programmability. So as it says, you can actually set the badge text programmatically. And let's explore the two different ways that I want to show it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this and I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. And this is just some sample JavaScript. Very important, this is JavaScript. This is client-side kind of behaviors. So go ahead and handle there, click, and I'm going to go ahead and create a panel header. And what I want to do in my panel header is I'm just going to put another button in there. And I'll go modify value or modify badge. And we'll put that up in there. Now I'm going to go into my modify badge. I'm going to go to text mode and just going to paste that in there. So it's got a bunch of stuff. I'm going to get rid of some of it. It has other data about it. But what I want to do is this. This is the little JavaScript that allows you to modify that badge value. So first, the first thing it's doing is getting a pointer to that badge. So I'm going to click here. Notice what I did is I put my insertion point in front of the first apostrophe, and then I'm going to go right here and I'm going to right click on this dark area and you'll see we have our two buttons. So I'll click button 1 because this is the name of the button right here. Okay, and by the way, if you had taken and changed the ID of that, then you would see that ID. So that's good practice. If you're going to have a ton of buttons on there, you can go in and change the IDs of the buttons, call them like BTN_user, BTN_X, and it'll be easier to look those things up. So this allows you to change a bunch of stuff. For instance, you can change the location of the badge. So I'm going to just comment that out for right now. I'm going to set the value there to 34, and then I'm going to comment these things out because I kind of want to walk through how that's working, kind of show you. So this is the most simplest possible, which is give me a control, a pointer to that control, and set the badge to a number, and this is the number I want it to set to. So let's click OK. Let's save it, and we'll do a working preview. Okay, so here comes a working preview. You'll see there we have our default value, 99, nothing happens on. We have our badge up here. So I'm going to click modify badge, and notice what happened. It went from 99 plus to 34. So this allows you at runtime on the client to modify it. So for instance, if you had a field over here, like a hidden field or something like that, you could use the modify badge. And you can just update that value at any time. Let's say I want to modify that badge. Let's duplicate this. Oops, and let's go ahead and paste it. I could have just done, that's duplicate. Let's go ahead and put this in here, and let's just change this to 300, just to show you how this works. So we'll go ahead, get rid of the, okay, and then we'll go into working preview. And you'll see that we have this button. I go modify, goes to 34. Now I'm going to set it to 300, and you'll see it goes back to 99 plus because it hits that 99 maximum of value. Pretty handy here. Now let's go ahead and take it the next step. I want to come back and talk a little bit about the styling of it, but I want to show you the other alternative for you to be able to set this value here. And that's by using an XBasic callback. So the idea is that maybe you have some information on the server, and once the server figures that out, you want to update the interface. Maybe other people are adding users and you want to make a call back to the server, get the number of users and update it from here. So let me go ahead and just show you quickly how you would do that. So I'm going to go to this second one. I'm going to just change it and I'll call this modify badge server. Going to go ahead and open that up, and now it's got this JavaScript here, but we don't want that. So I'm going to click action JavaScript. It's going to get rid of my current. I'm going to add a new action. In this case, I want it to perform an AJAX callback. So when the button's clicked, I want it to go back to the server to do something. So I click OK. The function is modify badge. That's just going to be the name of my function. Now, if you haven't done a lot of XBasic or AJAX callbacks, one thing that's nice is once you've created the action to do that, you can just click right here and it generates a example script with you with tons of information. So I copy that. Then you can click this little button down here and it actually opens up. That's the equivalent of clicking over here on XBasic functions, and you can paste it in here. So now what we've done is we've created an action JavaScript that will call the server and run this function. We created an example of that function, and we added that function into our UX so everything's ready to go. Okay, cool. Now it doesn't do anything yet. So let's go ahead and go back into our modify badge. And I'm just going to copy this out of here. And I'm going to go back to my XBasic function. So remember when I created the when I created this, I created the AJAX callback and created this modify badge. So now I go over here to XBasic functions, and here is where I can put all my code I want in here. So in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go dim JS out for JavaScript out as C. You go JS out is equal to, and I'm going to paste that in there. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is go modify underscore badge is equal to JS out. So what I'm doing is I'm building up some JavaScript here, and then I'm saying, go ahead and take that JavaScript and send it back to the client, to the client working out the web browser, the mobile device, whatever happens to be. And this is standard. Now, if you're doing things like setting values of fields and everything else, Alpha has its own built-in XBasic that does all that for you and translates it to JavaScript. But in this case, I actually want to have it take some JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and put this and make this, let's call it 76. So what it's going to do is it's going to run that same script where we get access to the control and we set the badge to 76. The rest are comments. Then I'm going to send that data back to the front end. Let's go ahead and look and see and make sure this works okay. So we have our default value, 99. This is the client side one. Now when I click here, it's going to actually, instead of just running that JavaScript that I had before, it's going to call back to the server, which happens to be local. So you'll see a little round loopy loop as it goes through that process. But if it works correctly, we should see this change to 76. So go there, there we go. So you'll notice that I changed by clicking here. In this case, it called back to the server and the server generated that JavaScript. So that's a cool thing. And it's a general design parameter or design pattern, is that if you can do anything with JavaScript, you can render that JavaScript on the server, send it to the client, and it will do it for you there. So let's look at this one more time. Let's say this 76 is not always the same. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say dim number as C. Oh, I'm going to actually number to display as C, and number to display is equal to random. And this generates a random number between 0 and 1 times, let's call it 100. So we'll multiply it by 100. And I think we have to do I've been playing with it. I'm just going to randomly create it. So I'm just throwing in some code here. Don't worry about it. It will be in, you can get a copy of this. Round. So I can round it to 0. So what this will do is this little statement right here is going to generate a random number between 0 and 1, and it's going to multiply it by 100, and then by rounding it, it gets it to be, a integer from that standpoint. There may be another better way, but that's the way I've done here.
Can I interrupt you because it's driving me crazy? The number to display, you defined it as a character field. Are you going to?
Well, I did that on purpose.
All right.
And I'll show you in a moment, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to I want to replace this value with number to display. Now there's two ways to do it. I could do it this way. I'm going to finish this, then I'll come back and show the other way. And it's just kind of playing with there. But no, you got it right there. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this to, and this is how I do it. There's a couple different ways, but I'm going to go ahead and put to display. So what I did is I just created a little piece of text here. It goes curly bracket, some text, and then curly bracket. And I just want this to be unique. And I'm kind of playing off of what's called JSON templating, the handlebar stuff. So now what I can do is I can say JS out is equal to string tran JS out, and I'll explain what this is. Comma, number to display. Okay, so what this does is the following. String tran takes a character variable. So in this case, all of this information here, it searches for this, whatever that is. It can be anything you want. You can do anything. So it says, oh, here's where I find that. And then I replace it with whatever is in here. And this needs to be a character. That's why I set it up as a character, because what will happen here is this will be actually a number, but alpha will automatically convert it to a character when it goes in there. Alternatively, if number was to display, you could do a string of a numeric in here. And I could, then what it does is it would take, string takes a number and turns it there. Problem there is it pads it. So I actually have to do all trim. This is crazy. So you can see it starts getting ugly really, really quick. So all I do is say, hey, let alpha do all the work. So I'm just going to have it do the following is I'm going to declare it as a character, generate the number, put it in here. And then in here, it's a character now, so it just works. It takes this character, finds this, and replaces it. So every time this is run, it's going to create a new number display and then update my JavaScript and send it out. And that is the plan. We will see if that happens. Okay, so working preview. So remember we have our regular here, that's 34, but now watch this, 29, 76, 44, 97, 72. So as you can see, all I'm doing is creating a random number, converting it to text, and then substituting that in my script. Really straightforward, but that's just kind of a joke. The reality is maybe in here you're doing a SQL query to look up maybe a value in the database or count some rows or do something like that, or call an outside API. And then all you do is then update your JavaScript to go out to put your badge to whatever num you want it to be from there. So it's very, very flexible, this base structure right here. Now, before we open to questions, I want to show one other quick thing so you'll get a feel for it. So let's go ahead and go to design here. Oh, and I'm going to actually do it here instead of there. Oops, let's go back to design, go to controls. I'm going to go back into my JavaScript here. So as I said before, we're doing something very simple. We're just getting a pointer to the object and then changing the badge. But here's some cool things you can do. I'm going to actually uncheck this. I'm going to actually set the badge to be false. So let's say I don't want to show the badge in a particular situation. Maybe the number is 0. I don't want to show 0. I just want it to be gone. So now watch what happens when I click this here. It just disappears. So that's really handy because maybe that could be an alert function, meaning that normally this is here, but then something happens, you want to pop it up and show the badge and put a number in there saying we've got 7 to 8 errors today. Got to get them fixed kind of thing. Then the person can click on it. So you don't have to have the badge, and it can be programmatic as you need it. As you clear things, this can be updated lower, etc. Now, alternatively too within here, which is really cool, is, and it's really functional, is I'm going to get rid of that again. So I'm commenting it out, but I could set the maximum value. I could also do things like set the location. So it's now currently top right edge, but let's go ahead and say, or yeah, left edge. So I can actually change not only that, but so I can programmatically create these badges on the fly. They don't have to be created in there. You can actually do it all through code, which is kind of handy. So you notice up here in the top left, oh, no, I gotta go back in here. That should have been top right edge. As you can see, very easy to implement. You could build it in automatically, but programmatically, it's just so easy to change this. So right here, it's there. I can move it over there. And in fact, I also changed the value at that time. So you can see what it is. Now notice that when I click here, since it's in that position over here, it's going to stay there until I tell it to go over here. So it's only done from there. So that's how it goes there. So that is the new badge capability. It's a very nice capability. I'm starting to use it in a lot of different places because it's so powerful from an information standpoint. As you can see, it's really simple to implement. You can either do it client side with JavaScript or do some server side stuff and put that in there. For instance, like when I load up this, we're going to run the on dialog initialize. Well, I could just take this script right here, put it into there, and then pre-render the badge and do that stuff while they log into it. So it's pretty handy, and you can do that. And again, that's in the on, let me go back here, the on dialog initialize, because you can sit there and you can generate JavaScript and then say e.javascript is equal to, and then put it in there, and then whatever's in here will be spit out, so it'll go there, do the rendering there. And then I will have this up on the repo so people can grab it, but let's go ahead and open it up for questions, see if people have questions about this capability.
We do. We've got a couple on the badges, and then we have some other just general questions as well. So let's start with badge questions. The first one has to do with, let me just find it here real quick. It's all right. Is whether or not, is the badge itself clickable? Or is the on-click event for the whole thing?
The on-click event is the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next question is, what version or build did the button badge become available?
Oh, good questions.
I've got the answer to that because I just popped into the documentation, which is nice enough to let you know when things come out. And so it came out in version 4.6.2.3. So it's been out for, I think, at least a couple of
yeah, it's been there pretty heavily
releases.
used. We're just catching up. I mean, I feel bad that we're a little behind the curve on getting all these features detailed out, but we're going to be working hard to doing that.
Yeah. Maybe if they made fewer features, it'd be easier for us. I don't think they're going to do that, though.
No, I don't think so at all.
Hey, Dave, before you move on for that, I did want to mention that in 4.6.2.3, there was a small issue with badges, so you'd be better off starting with 4.6.2.4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
You know, I kind of missed my favorite release was 3.14159. That was my favorite of all time. I'm not sure.
Wait, wow, that's controversial, that statement right there. That's you either love it or hate it, that one. Very polarizing.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sticking to it.
That's it for badge questions. So maybe we can get into some other questions.
Get out of here, badge.
I
do have another person. Let's take a couple of these, but I do have someone else asked a question. So.
Oh, you're gonna do another demo? Oh, super.
No, it's not another demo, but I had a question that came in I want to cover. So, but let's do this other, and let's do a couple.
We'll do a couple, then we'll move back to you. That sounds good.
Great.
So these will be quick. The person asks, is there anything new on the calendar control? So the calendar control is not in the official release. It might still be in development, but it's definitely in beta, I think, at this point. So if you have got questions, if you'd like to see it, you can actually send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com, and it is hidden in the official release, but you need a feature key to unlock it and play with it because it's not fully ready yet for prime time. So if you do have more questions and you'd like to get an advanced view of it, just send an email to guides and we'll be happy to take care of it. Next one is just has to do with view boxes. And does a view box have a search option?
No, it does not. Yeah, so what you have to do with a view box in that scenario is to create, basically you can reload the view box with data at any time. Mm-hmm. So let me show you just a quick example here, and we'll go through that. It's a really good one here. So I'm going to create a new UX real quick. And I moved to a different machine, so I don't have my saved controls. Bam, bam, bam. So we'll just go to panel cards, create a panel layout, panel card, and a panel header. Seeing a little pattern, huh? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go here, put a view box in here. See, I'm still working out memory. Okay, I'll go VB customers. So I'll go ahead and create a view box here. And I'm going to go to my data source. And remember, a view box could be a static HTML. You do not have to connect it to data. That's not necessary. But I'm going to go ahead and click data here because I want this one data driven. Now this could be a list where you're using a list as the data source. Cool thing about a list is you can filter it. And so it's kind of linked to there. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a database query. So I'm going to call back to my database. And I want to go ahead and grab the customers. And I want to have maybe, just a few of these here. Okay. So this is my current database. So I'm going to go to my Viewbox layout. I'm going to go ahead and add an item in here, add these in it. Nothing really crazy, and click OK. So we'll go ahead and we'll go Viewbox search. Or I'm going to call it filter. So I'm going to go ahead and do the VB customers, and hopefully if it looks good, you should see it'll automatically call the database, pull a list of customers, and populate them in there. Might need to do. Yep, so they're in there. So it's not pretty yet, but you have these items here. Now, one cool thing about a Viewbox, and I want to show you while we're here, this is kind of handy in this, is that I can actually highlight those things. And there is a container here. Where's the container? Yep, list row container. It's kind of cool. It'll actually take a Viewbox and make it kind of into a little list control. I'm going to go ahead and click that. So now this is in a container there. Just cleans it up a little bit. I also am going to set this to consume the full panel card. And let's do this. Ready? So you can see now we have our Viewbox here, and it kind of acts like a list. But you'll notice it's got everything in there. So now let's go into our panel header and do two things. First, I'm going to add a text box. Let's call it search. And also going to add a button here. Call it search. Okay. Great. So search right here, and I'm going to cheat and go ahead and put it so I don't have to type it all ALF key for now. So search is just a text box. Now I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go into my VB of customers here. And actually, yep. So I can go to my data source here, and you'll notice we have a filter criteria here. So I could actually set a filter right here, but this can be dynamic. So I can sit there and go, customer ID is equal to, and then oh, where's my, oh, wait. I want to go to my arguments first. So I'm going to add a filter there, but I'm going to go to my arguments right here. I'm going to add an argument that's called customer ID, and it's type character. Okay, so I'm going to set the value. Actually, where I want to get that from is from my search box. So the first thing I'm doing is I've connected my data into a query to the database. Second thing I'm doing is creating an argument that's going to look at that field that's on there. And now whenever I put anything in this field right here, it'll go into that argument. Now what I can go is go into this filter here, and I can say customer ID is equal to, and I can insert that argument. And it's going to put that argument there. And now that is my filter condition. So let's go ahead and test this out. So we'll do this now. It should come up. Okay. Notice it's ALF key. Now I can go in here and go blonde P. Now notice it didn't update. And the reason I need to do is I need to say, oh, okay, I want to change this. So I'm going to go here to button search, and I'm going to go ahead and add a new action, and it's going to be a Viewbox control action, and the action is refresh data. Notice there's not really, there's some other things like populate Viewbox, it's a little more set, you can set the data, but let's do refresh data for right now, and I'll come back and explore that. I tell it which one I want to do, and I can do that, I can animate it and things like that. So now I've got a real simple way that I could go ahead and do a preview. It's going to go automatically. Notice it's automatically populating this. So you'll notice that it's automatically pulling up that when it loads in. You can actually override that. And I can do a search, and notice now it's blonde P. And I can do ALF key search. So basically what you're doing is you're filtering the content that goes to the Viewbox and there. So that I'm using a control bar, or I'm sorry, I'm using a direct connection to a database. But as you've seen, when you create the Viewbox, you could actually put in a list control, which is kind of cool. You could actually put in a list control, and then when you filter that list, you can say, okay, now refresh the Viewbox based on the filtered list, and it will only pull the stuff in from the list. So that's actually a really handy way, because the list has a whole bunch of pre-made filtering stuff. But again, if you're not, it's overkill. If you're going to a Viewbox, you may not, why not just use the list already? So it's up to you. But as you can see, you can use arguments with SQL query. There are also built-in functions where you, for instance, I could have, instead of here, I could call a REST API custom, which is a VB. I could also do a JavaScript function. It would call that and then populate it. And in those functions, in those areas, it can generate the code and put it from there. So that's the way to go there. So that's just a quick example of how you can filter it. But again, remember, a Viewbox is a sort of just a data display mechanism. You give it some JSON data or data, and it uses an HTML template to render it. And it has a lot of power. I mean, you can use a lot of CSS and other stuff to do it. But just remember, it kind of, it has the built-in data source, but you're going to have to kind of wire up things like filtering and other things that go along with there. So I hope that's helpful, kind of give you a guide to kind of where to go from. Just to let you know, there is the other function here, which I want to kind of show real quick, is that instead of refresh data, which just tells the Viewbox, hey, you're set up, you're ready to go. I don't know what you're doing, but just reload yourself, which is kind of nice because it's self-contained. But you could also use what's called populate Viewbox. And then the Viewbox data here could be JSON data kind of things. And this could actually be calling to JavaScript for a function here. But I would probably put that JavaScript function actually in the Viewbox itself and just say refresh. But this is kind of flexible. There are different ways to do it. One thing that's kind of cool about this is that and I'm just going to put some junk data here. It's not real data. What I can do is turn this to text mode, and here's the JavaScript that has that run. So you'll see here's the data it's supposed to be populating. So it gets a pointer to the Viewbox. It has some data, it populates it and refreshes it. So you could actually create and generate this information programmatically, either through an XBasic callback. There's many ways to do it there. But again, I would probably stick to, for simplicity, do your filtering and everything in the data source here, either, through that element, and then just use your other buttons to just refresh the data. And that way it's more self-contained. You don't have code buried here to do a search. You don't have it buried here. It's all there. So if you need to make a change, you go there, and you don't care who refreshes that Viewbox. It's always going to come up with the same result.
Wow, very cool. Thanks. Was there something else you wanted to show before?
Oh yeah, let me go ahead and show you. So we had a question about dropdowns. I'm going to go ahead and keep that here, and I'm going to go ahead and put in. The question is with a dropdown. Let's go ahead and show you this here. So the dropdown box, and I'm going to go ahead and add another button here. Okay. So a drop-down box, obviously, we can go here, and I'm just going to make my choices here. A, 1, B, 1, C, no, actually 3. So that's the default value of it. But the question is first, and just kind of lead it through, is that let's say I want to change this at runtime. So now what I can do is in here, populate drop-down box. There's not an action JavaScript to do it, but if you go to text mode and you select method, and I'm going to type the words dropdown, you'll see there is a function here called populate dropdown box. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and close it. I'm going to insert the code here. So basically, I'm going to populate my dropdown box here. Oh, sometimes it doesn't. What I call it? I call the DD box. And let me go ahead and get rid of this here. Okay. So notice when I load up and run the dropdown box, you'll see that it has ABC. Now, when I click here, you'll notice now it's added A2, B2, C2. And I could clear these out, so it only shows the new values. It's really up to you from that standpoint here. Now, the question was, okay, that's great. There is actually, but how do I do it like from the server? So that's, again, what we saw before. I'm going to create a new button, and I'm going to go callback. Okay. And you'll see I'm doing almost the same thing I did a little earlier. I'm creating my function. I'm going to go ahead and paste it here and save that. So now this will make an AJAX callback to the server. What I want it to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this, go my XBasic function here, and go JS out. It's probably starting to see a pattern equal to, oh, nope, let's do that right. And notice when I did here, it's string, but I can also do JavaScript, which color codes and does some other nice things. So it's easier to see when you're doing work here. Okay. And now what I can do is then say drop down is equal to JS out. So much like I did on the client and then previously, I can then take this right here. This is my actual data values. This is the field. This could be like, for instance, you know, dim drop down values SC drop down values is equal to, and let me go ahead and copy this. Okay, now I'm going to go here and I'm going to change this to similar pattern. I'm basically just generating the, so I'm going to go JS out is equal to string tran. There are other ways to do string translations. This is the one I use a lot, so I'm very comfortable with it, but there's actually some that will just take like a pointer variable. They're really neat things. Or you could use the handlebars, which is really powerful, and then drop down values. Okay, so basically what it does is you populate this. It has to be a string, so you can use, like, what's cool is you can actually generate this with some built-in commands from the database or whatever to be. I'm going to have my basic way to populate that drop-down box. And then I'm just going to create the JavaScript and send it to the front end. And so let's go ahead and see if this works. Actually, just to make sure it works properly, let's go back into design. Okay. And just so we're really clear, okay, cool. Wrap it up here. Any last questions? Okay, so remember, it's going to load up a default set of values right here. I'm going to click here. That was done on the client side. Notice how fast it is, but now I'm going to click here. You saw a little thing, but here's my new values here. So I can use that technique to call back. Now remember, you got to be careful if you're offline, you know, you can't go back to the server all the time to get stuff, but that's a way to do it. So you can use the built-in function, basically the populate drop-down box, and there's really good examples on the online documentation, and you can just generate your own drop-down values and populate it. Boom, you're good to go, and then send it back and it will do it. And again, you'll notice how it kept adding them. There is a function in there where you can say clear out, so the drop-down only has the new values. So there's pretty handy capability, and it's really fast, so the user really may not even see that. And where I use it is, there could be conditional times when the drop-down has to look differently. I want to use the same drop-down box, but modify it over time. This is how you do it. So I want to thank the user who sent in the request. We appreciate that. And back to you, Dave.
Excellent. A couple more badge questions. One person asked, could you update that badge number using Pusher, which is something I think you demonstrated.
Yes, absolutely. So the way you can do that is, if I go back to my badge, remember what you can do is you go into the properties here, and that's a great use of it, because then the server could be updating everybody. So you turn that on, you put in your Pusher configuration. This information comes from the Pusher system. So when you set up your account there, okay, then once you have that on, you go to the client-side events, and I believe it's called pusher, actually, on pusher message, yep. And then right here, you can put in your JavaScript to run. So for instance, in the pusher, you may be sending out that number, and then in here, you would just paste the code to actually update that number and put that number in, and then substitute what came from pusher. Alternatively, you could in pusher put the whole JavaScript command, which makes it really flexible, but it's up to you how you want to do from there. And if you'll see over here, the parameters are the message. So that would be, for instance, the number. And so you could put that there. And so you would say, let's go back to our code real quick. Let's go back to our xbasic function. No, actually, let's go to our controls here. Copy this. Go back to our client side. Paste here. And then what you do is just grab eMessage, put it right here. Boom. And you actually don't even need this. So whatever number pusher pushes out, when the UX hears it, it's going to run this little script. It's going to get a pointer to that, and then it's going to take whatever that number is and set the badge, and boom, your user interface will update accordingly. So yeah, it's really straightforward, and it's a great example because you don't want people polling the server all the time. You want the server to say, oh, anybody who's watching number of users, here's the updated new user, or here's the orders that are in queue, or invoices that need to be reviewed. So it's an ideal example of how to do that. And it's really slick because the user just all of a sudden the badge will update, and it'll be a number and it could keep moving over time. So it's really fun.
Awesome. Thanks very much. So you used an example of a badge which, say, counted records. Can you show an example of the XBasic or JavaScript, whichever, to count records either in a list or from a table? I'll let you choose.
Oh yeah, so I mean, if I wanted to do that, I'll go right here. First and foremost, I would do a, like I'd use my XBasic SQL Actions code generator.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say query to get JSON data. And so then, once that JSON comes back, you can then convert it into a pointer and count the number of items in that pointer. That's a really simple way to do. Or you could custom code your own, do a query and custom do something like, select count of the number that match this query requirements. You would have to use the traditional kind of XBasic scripting because then you could pull that. It would return one value and then you could pull that out from there. But I would probably use this because it's pretty simple. You just go like there, you say, okay, let's try it real quick. Let's see if I can do it here. So I'll go to my Northwinds, go to my table, customers, field list. Let's just grab this. Doesn't really matter. Okay. Paste it there. So that's going to, basically all this does is make a call and it puts it into this JSON. So now I can go dim customer. I'm going fast here, so bear with me. Pointer as P, customer pointer is equal to JSON parse JSON, okay? And then I can say dim, we'll actually use what we've already got here. We've already got, did I do that? How did I do this? Oh yeah, let's go ahead and I'll just substitute right here. I've already got it. So I'll just say number to display is equal to customer pointer, since this is an array, dot size. This is just a cheaty way to do it there. So basically what this code does right here is it calls back and pulls back a JSON array of data. And again, I could change the filter. Right now it's doing all of them. There's no where clause, but that could be changed if needed. Then what I do is I take the resulting JSON that comes back, I put that into a pointer variable because then it's really easy to use. And then I use a built-in function to say, hey, this pointer, or it's actually a pointer array, how many? So let's go ahead and see what happens here. See if I blow it up. But definitely try to use the built-in XBasic generators because it makes your life really simple. I got 1 minute. Let's see if this blows up. There we go. Okay. There we go. There's 91 customers in there.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. I got to tell you, the this code, I mean, is really rock solid. And this function where you can just take JSON and turn it into a pointer variable and then there's a lot of things you can do with it. That's kind of the way I go for it, because you can see it's really simple. It works great. Alpha's done 95% of my code. I just have to do a little thing to update it. Now there are other tricks and ways to do it, but that's how I'd approach it. And again, I'll put this, we'll put this in the repo so you can go see it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've come to the end of the time. Dion, thank you very much, man. You're on fire today with all of these.
No candy for you. Go to the next house.
Yeah, exactly. Slow it down, man. Thank you, everyone who showed up and those who asked questions. If you do have questions, and there were definitely some we didn't get to today, please send them to guides@alphasoftware.com. We will get back to you with an answer, and we may also show it at an upcoming Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast.
And everybody needs to do. Everybody needs to do the Vincent Price and laugh on the way out. I can't.
Very good.
I can't do it. He's so good.
Have a great Halloween, everyone. Stay safe. Hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye.